Mark Dipthr0ng Herm has been on a massive heater lately. He kicked things off in May with a third-place finish in the Full Tilt Sunday Brawl. In July, he had a huge month, taking down the Full Tilt 750K Guarantee, the Sunday Mulligan, and the Bodog 100K, and taking second in the Ultimate Bet 200K. He kept the ball rolling in August with a first-place finish in the PokerStars 500 buy-in Saturday event, and most recently, finishing in third in the Ultimate Bet 200K. Dipthrong has earned hundreds of thousands in the past few months, so we had to get him here to talk to us a bit to get into his head. We've got him on the phone today to talk about some hands that he played in that recent third-place finish at Ultimate Bet. All right, so how you doing today, Mark?
Good, how you doing, John?
I'm doing very good. And so, I mean, obviously you're probably doing better than me. I think the first order of business actually should be to ask you how you go about making a deal with the devil to be able to have the kind of scores you've been getting recently.
I don't know, really. It's pretty crazy. I can't believe it. I just been running really, really good late. And I've been playing a pretty good amount, too. And I think I've been playing pretty good, but I've been running super good.
Well,
so that's definitely, yeah, you got to do that.
Once you have a big score, it's pretty hard not to try to play your butt off and just play as many tournaments as you can. So obviously volume will have something to do with it. But man, you've been on quite a heater this past few months.
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy. And then also, along with the volume, it's definitely the confidence. I think helps a lot too. Like I'm at the point where like I'm trusting my reads and stuff, and I think that definitely helps too, because if I wasn't as confident, I might not be willing to maybe play as risky or play as aggressive or whatever.
Right. And yeah, just go with your read, and not worry about whether you're right in this particular instance. As long as you follow your reads all of the time, you're probably going to be right more often if you're confident in your reads. So.
Right, exactly.
So, well, you sent us two hands from your recent third-place finish at Ultimate Bet, which just happened this Sunday. So we're really interested to talk about these because these are really interesting hands, and you think they kind of have a lot of higher level thinking involved in them, and they involve reads and all that stuff. So let's actually jump right into it. The first hand that you sent us, it has blinds at 1,200, 2,400 with a 200 ante, and you're dealt pocket eights pre-flop. Can you explain the pre-flop action to us?
Okay, this table... Wooders 81 is at the table, and I think at this point he's chip leader of the tournament, and there's like 35 left. And from what I know about his game and from people that I know tell me, they say that he's really aggressive. And I just know that he's ranked on pocket 5, so I'm sure he's good. He raises under the gun, 8-handed, standard raise, 2.5x. I'm on the button with 8. With approximately 35 blinds. So here I could do a lot of things. I could call. I could re-raise. I opted to call because since he raised another position, if I re-raise him here, I'm not gonna turn my hand into a bluff by re-raising with my eights to see where I'm at or whatever, and then fold to a shove. That would be really bad because if I'm going to do that, I might as well do it with any two cards because me re-raising and folding eights, it just completely kills the value of my hand. Based on his position, I just opted to call, but I don't think he would necessarily shove real light there on me. So, I mean, I could re-raise and call, but it kind of kills the value of my hand. But I don't think he's going to shove there on me since he raised in only position unless he has a complete monster. Or, like, his range would probably be, like, ace-king, ace-queen, and like 10s plus, if even that wide.
Okay.
So I decided just to call, see a flop.
And what do you do based on what different kinds of flops make you scared to kind of proceed with the hand? Like what kind of danger flops are you seeing that might make you let go of these eights at this point? Because you think that you're ahead pre-flop. You think you're likely ahead,
right.
Correct?
An ace-high board could be tough to deal with. And not only could it be something where I'm an ace, but I think that it's pretty normal nowadays for people, when they're playing against other known good players, when they flat free flop, they're probably putting them on a high percentage of, it's going to be pocket pairs in their range. So a lot of times what happens, if I'm the one that's raising and someone like that flat, and the flop comes pretty blank, like maybe 10 high, nothing. I'll just check fold a lot of times because I'll give the guy credit for he could very easily have a monster because people do that all the time now.
Mm.
And also, if he has any pair any pair between fives and up, I don't think he's going to be folding it a large portion of the time. But an ace-high board is really tough because not only could he have an ace, but he could also, if I call the flop as like a float kind of or whatever to reevaluate on the turn, he can just bet again because there's not very many hands with aces in my range.
Okay. And so the flop comes out, king 7-4 with two hearts. So it's king, it's not an ace, so you aren't necessarily as scared as you could be, but I mean, does the king change anything really?
Yeah, it definitely does because there's just one more card out there that could beat me. But also, I figure he's definitely capable of c-betting this flop because also a high card. I mean, he probably puts me on a hand that I have, like a mid-pocket pair or something like that. So he's going to bet, I think. So I think if I call here, it's going to be kind of hard for him to fire again on the turn with complete air.
Okay. And he does bet out. He bets out about 9,100, 9,140, and you do elect to call. So you're basically trying to see what he does on the turn to define his hand more? I mean, what kind of actions could he take on the turn to define his hand?
I mean, if you would lead out again normal on the turn, based on the turn card being like a nondescript card, I'm probably going to fold here. I don't think a ton of people with double barrel with real high frequency. But also, based on the board, I thought it was probable that he could have a flush draw or he could have really anything. And based on the turn card, I think I can really narrow his range down a little better.
Okay.
Better.
Well, I mean, the turn card comes, the 7 of diamonds, so it's not a heart. It doesn't, I mean, obviously, yeah, it's not a heart, and it pairs the board. So it's a pretty innocuous card because you couldn't have put him on a 7 pre-flop, I assume. So what does that do with your actions and the range that you put him on?
Well, it doesn't do a whole lot, but his bet size tells me a lot. I think his bet size was a pretty big giveaway because he bet exactly the pot, which left me with he bet about 30K, and I had about 30K behind. So he pretty much told me that he's calling me. So if for some reason I was floating on a flop with whatever, I'm not going to shove here because it looks like he's calling me. So I mean, it's kind of an effective bet by him in some cases, but it also is kind of like a giveaway. I don't think he would ever do this with a 7. Unless, I mean, if he did, he kind of outplayed me because his bet looks weak to me. Mm-hmm. I don't think he would ever do this with the king, but it just seems like he's losing pot control, and if I do have a big hand like aces or something like that, this really makes no sense for him to be betting that big. Like there's really no hand that he has to protect that well. I mean, my range isn't a flush draw very often or anything like that, so his bet really just makes no sense.
Okay. Well, to be a little bit more specific about the pot at this point, there was about 36,000 in the pot, and Waters had opened for 33,000, so a little bit less than the pot, and you only had about 60,000 in your stack, so he bet a little bit more than half of your stack. Isn't it the case nowadays that people are willing to make that kind of bet, which you say is a weak-looking bet, to look weak when they are actually strong, to overbet a little bit?
I think in certain cases they are maybe a little bit more deep stack or something like that. But the way he did that, and that came into my mind definitely. I was like, maybe he's owning me here and he has a 7 or king full or something. But just the fact that he really gave me no fold equity, it doesn't really make sense. Because honestly, if for whatever reason I had been floating here, there's no way I'm putting my chips in if I don't have anything. Right. Because it just looks like I have no fold equity. And I just think, I take that line with my flush draw type hands like that on the turn too. You don't want to fold. You can't just, I guess you could just shove, but you're not really representing anything. And your hand definitely looks weaker. So I definitely think that that's an option, but I don't think in this particular spot he's going to show up with a monster many times. Okay. It makes no sense for him to bet any real big hand like this, like aces or even a king. It just makes no sense.
Okay. And so going with that read, you ended up pushing all in, and like you said, he was pretty committed with any kind of relatively decent holding. So he called and he showed Jack 10 of hearts. So he did have just a flush draw, and he actually had 2 overcards to your pair as well, incidentally. Is that pretty much what you would put him on, that kind of hand?
Yeah, definitely. Any kind of flush draw I thought he had. So, I mean, I was pretty confident. Problem is, with on UK, you don't have a time bank. So, like, you really have to, like, kind of make your decisions pretty quick. I mean, at that point it was for my whole tournament, but I felt pretty confident that that's what he had.
All right. And then the river comes out a brick as far as this pot's concerned, an ace of spades, and you take down a $155,000 pot to double up. So that had to definitely be a pretty critical pot towards your deep finish in this tournament, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and it was definitely a confidence builder because that Wooders guy, he seemed real good, and he seemed like pretty much the only guy at that table at the time that I really had to worry about. And so me tripling him there was definitely huge. All
right, then. The next hand that you sent us, it was when there was only about 20 players left. The blinds were at 1,500 and 3,000 with a $300 ante. 300 ante, I should say. And you're dealt pocket queens in mid position. Can you explain the action pre-flop?
Okay. Okay, so at this point in the tournament, I'm probably around 3 of 20 or so. 3rd out of 20. And always late in these UB tournaments, I'm playing real aggressively. So whenever I'm playing real aggressively, you always have to be aware of people playing back at you, especially like good players or whatever. And at this particular table, Thayer was at my table, and he's a known good online player. So you always got to fear people playing back at you. Okay, so pre-flop this hand, mid position, I have queens. I stand to raise, 2.5x. Guy to my left flat calls me, and he even flat called me a real good amount. I'm not necessarily a tricky type player, but usually like he was flatting and check folding a lot, or it just seemed like he wasn't that good of a player. He just seemed a little bit too loose, and he had a real big stack, and he flatted. He was probably chip leader at the time, and he flatted. And then in the small blinds, Thayer squeezed. I made it 7,500 pre-flop, and he made it about another 10K more on top of my raise. So that was a really, really small 3-bet. So usually in this spot, I really like my hand, obviously. I mean, there's 20 left. I'm playing super aggressively. He could be playing back at me with a ton of hands. So my first instinct was that, obviously, my hand's gold, and I want to re-raise or whatever, try to induce some action. But then I look back at it, and I realized that this guy that flatted my first raise, he seemed like the type that kind of had no fold button, and it just didn't seem like he was folding any 2 cards to this type of raise. And it just seemed a little bit awkward for Thayer to be doing this. He was in the small blind, out of position, without an actual hand.
Right.
So the more I thought about it, the more his hand looked really, really strong. So it was another 10K to me, and I had about 130K, so I could have technically step mined here, which I don't necessarily like to do unless we're really deep. And we are technically deep enough here. So I just called with my queens, not necessarily set mining, but trying to figure out if my hand was good post-flop, which at this point I wasn't completely convinced that it was.
Right.
And I thought the fact that we had this other guy in the hand, a loose guy, donkey-type guy, in the hand, I thought he being in the pot with me also would help find Thayer's hand a lot better, because it's a little bit tougher betting into 2 people, especially based on the texture of the flop. So I think post-flop I would have a little bit more sure of an idea that I was beat or not.
Right.
Okay, so I call the additional 10K, and then obviously the loose player behind me also makes the call.
Right. Well, and in this kind of case, like you said, Thayer barely min-raised you, and he had to pretty much know that you were going to call. And like you said, you both probably knew that Jaycee, the guy with no fold button, was probably going to call as well. So yeah, that has to indicate a heck of a lot of strength. I mean, he's not expecting either of you to fold with this raise. So what kind, and he's out of position, so he's going to be first to act on the flop. So what could he do on any flop to define his hand?
Well, an ace-high board might slow him down a little bit, something like that. It depends, really. I mean, you don't, if he's going to fire into two people on the flop, especially given that this guy is loose, I don't think he really would. I don't think he really would unless he had it.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I just don't think that at this point in the tournament he would really bet on a whatever board, hoping that we both miss, especially with this guy behind me. He'd be calling with anything. But his raise pre-flop, yeah, it was small, but that kind of stuff has been kind of standard recently. People have been, with their three bets, raising, like almost like min-raising. But it's kind of weird here because there's a flatter, and also because it was a flatter, and also because we were really deep, too. And he was out of position. It just didn't really make that much sense. So, I mean, I was kind of irked by it a little bit.
Okay. Well, like you said, you called, and then Jaycee, the guy with no fold button, also called. So the pot at this point was 61,000, almost 62,000. And the flop comes down 10-10-6 rainbow. So a paired board, that's usually pretty good news for something like pocket queens. There's no overcards, and the board's paired. And Thayer leads out for 30,000, so a little bit less than half the pot. What you're thinking now?
Right, so, I mean, generally speaking, yeah, it's a really good flop for my hand. If he had been doing it with some kind of big ace pre-flop, obviously I have the best hand still, I want to see the ace-10. So, I mean, it really was a good flop, but I still was, in the back of my mind, I had to go with my pre-flop read that I was beat, and that just the whole situation here, it smelled like he had a complete fold because of the other guy being in the pot. Now, if the other guy had not been in the pot with me, I don't see any way that I would have gotten away from the hand. I mean, pre-flop, especially with how aggressively I've been playing. Whenever you start playing real aggressively, you always worry about people playing back at you. And so, like, whenever I am playing super aggressively and someone re-raises me, I always consider, I mean, they could be playing back at me, and obviously I'm going to shove a lot of times. I mean, a fair amount of times, because I think they could be playing back at me wide, and that usually is the case. But for whatever reason here, it just all added up to him having a big hand, at least I thought. I mean, I really, and he hadn't really been getting out of line either. I mean, I don't know a ton about his game, but he really hadn't been doing a whole ton. So, I mean, I don't know if he was playing a lot of tables at the time, or it was on a Sunday. But I don't know. I just didn't think there was really any reason that he would be getting out of line there.
Okay. Well, not many people are going to be folding queens on that kind of flop, so it had to have taken a pretty decent read to get away from it. And obviously you won't know for sure whether or not it was the correct move or not, but you had told me earlier that you kind of got some inside information from a friend who had been talking with Thayer on AIM that kind of confirmed your suspicions?
Right, yeah. My buddy Charter, he talks with them, and I asked him if he would ask him what he had. And this was after the tournament, and he said that yeah, I was beat. And I really don't see any reason why he wouldn't tell the truth there. I mean, the tournament's over.
Right.
Whatever.
So
yeah, I mean, I really do think he had a big hand.
So obviously a good call for a crippling kind of pot. I mean, you had Thayer covered by maybe 30K, so it could have gotten pretty dangerous, especially if he had an overpair to you. So
yeah, definitely.
So two critical pots, two very different ways to play them. I really appreciate you sending me these hands and going over them with me. Thank you very much.
No problem, Sean. My pleasure.
And thank you guys for watching The Online Zone on Card Player TV.